Hello everyone. This is a showcase on a project that I have created using HTML, CSS, JavaScript and PHP. Because this is a showcase, I'm not going to go over my code line by line or type it as I go in a tutorial fashion, but after this demonstration I'm going to briefly explain my code a little bit so that you see how the inside works. This video is meant to give a little bit of an insight of how full stack development may be like, at least a simple procedure, and how using the right tools programming can be really fun. Now, for obvious reasons, I'm going to conceal any kind of personal information regarding myself, like email, any fields on my database, or any not so easily accessible paths on my own website space. With that said, let's get started. First, I have the index.php side that shows a logo of my website, a bar for new users to sign up or returning users to sign in, trinkets for the home button that redirect here, a calendar to see the date, and a clock to see the time. I also have a table on my PHPMyAdmin on my own website, and it shows the fields for user ID for every user that's coming in, the name, the email, their sex, an image extension, which I'll explain more later, a UID, which is user ID, not to confuse with the first one, as this is the username that they use to log in, the password, anything about them, and extra fields for if the account is active, if there is a password token, or if there is a date limit on that token. So what would a user do first? Let's try to sign up. So I have to fill the fields, and there will be an email to confirm my account later. First my name, then either a working email or a valid email format, my sex, profile picture, a username, a password, let's say 1234. Then let's try again, 123. You notice that now we are throwing an error because these passwords don't match as I check it with each key pressed, but as I finish filling it out, it should go back to a check, meaning that it's okay. Now that the email is also okay because it's not being used, neither the username. But right now it doesn't matter because the table is empty. Now I fill out something about myself. Let's say hello everyone. And now that every field is filled out, the sign up button is enabled and I can click on it and we'll get a bar saying a success that we have been added, and it will refresh this table. You notice the row that with the information that we provided, but the password is not 1234. It is rather a string of characters because the password has been hashed. That means that even I, the administrator of this site, cannot know the password of a registered user. There is also the active field that has been given a string of characters because, as it is said on the pop-up, a confirmation email will be sent upon account creation. So even if we were to try to sign in right now with the correct password, we need to check our email and activate first. So if we go into the provided email, you notice a message from an admin and we're asked to confirm our account. We're referred to by name, email to confirm account registration on the site, please click on the following link. So as we click here, we're taken to a site where the account has been confirmed, please click here to sign in. Let me refresh on the table. And you notice that the active field is now yes, that means that the user can now log in. And I'm gonna close this and refresh here. And as I sign in, with the credentials provided, I can now successfully sign in. Now, just for manner of testing this, let's say that let me sign out. Let's say that I want to sign in, but I do not remember either my username or password. So there's this option right here, where I can select if I either forgot my username or password, and I must provide an email. So let me try username. So once the information has been provided, I can put on recover. If the email you provide is in the database, you will receive a message with your username. I see some sites that mention an email has been sent to and they give you the email. It is always advisable not to output any information that the user inputs because you don't know the intentions of this user and you may be at risk of cross-site scripting. But anyways, so if this email is the correct one, we should be getting an email. And now here it is, admin Green username recovery. You have received this email because you requested username. It is, and I just throwing back the username because you can't do anything really unless you know the password. So let's say that instead I forgot my password. Forget username or password. And this time I check on password. I enter the pertaining email. Press on recover. The email device in the database. You will receive a message with instructions to change your password. So now you should see on the table that a token has been created and there is a date limit. So if I go into my email, you notice a password recovery and we're giving a change link with the same token, but this token should expire in 5 minutes from the delivery. That means that I only have 5 minutes to update my password. So as I click in here, we're allowed to enter the information to change, and let's say a new password 5678. And 5678, you'll notice that this works in the same way as in the form. So as I press on change password has been changed. Please click here to log in. If we check the table, you'll notice the password sort of starts the same, but the hash is different. The token has been changed back to none and the limit to 0 because there is no need to expect a password change anymore. So let me close this and let's go back to the site. If we try to sign in with the previous password, you'll notice that it's wrong. So if we use the newer one, we are able to sign in. So now let's check our profile. The profile is going to display basically your username, your name, anything about you. That's why I wanted information here. Your email, because you're signing as yourself, and an option to edit the info. So let's try it. Here we have our info already filled out for us. We can choose to change our profile pic. We have to provide a password to finish filling this out. Here we can change the password because we're assuming they already have the password. So it's something that the user should be able to do without expecting an attack. So now let's change this to instead say hi everyone. And let's put on the password. I could put something different here, but let me put the same. And save changes. So we get confirmation and the page refreshes and the information is changed. Now, let's sign out. You'll notice that instead I'm only seeing the about field and nothing else, because the site cannot assume that the user that is coming in is a user on the site. Therefore, you should not be able to see the email, nor should you be able to edit the information, because this does not provide security for the already existing user. Let's test this out a little bit more and try adding other users. Let's say John Doe and an email, a valid format. You're a male. You do not have a picture ready, so let's use a default. Let's try putting the username that I provided before, and you notice that it's been taken. Therefore, we have to use another one. Dido1 and a password 1234, a password 1234, and something about me. Let's just say hello and sign up. Let me add one more user. Let's say Jane Doe, then an email. This time I'm going to provide a valid email, a working email, and this is a female. We don't have a picture at the ready. Let's try J.1 taken, J.2, 1234 password 1234, and hi. Sign up. Let's try yet another user. Let's see beatbot, then an email a at b.d, because a at b.c is taken. Let's say mail, then a profile pic beatbot, username bbot, password 1234, password 1234, and about beatbot and beep beep robot. So sign up. Now we have several users. What is my reason for doing this? First, you notice they're being populated on the site. These users, because they do not have a valid email, should never be able to activate, but Jane Doe should, and we should be getting an email to activate her account. In any case, you notice that now I have more users, and just for my own help and to view that this is working, I have created a site that shows all the users, and you can see the users that have been logged on the site. Notice that the users that provide an image have an image, and the users that provide a default have a default, but we know that John Doe is a male, Jane Doe is a female, and that's why I have here female default, male default, user 1 and user 4. So we just store these images using the user's ID and adding user to it, and also storing the extension, which is why this is uppercase PNG, and on the table this is also uppercase PNG. Now from here, if I'm signed in, let's see, 678, I can go into each of these guys' profiles and I have an option to send a message. Bitbot and John Doe will never get the message because the email doesn't exist. But then again, it's up to the user to provide something that they want to work on the site. If they do not provide a valid email, it is only fair that they do not get service. Jane Doe, however, did provide a valid email, so if I try to send a message, are you a robot? You notice that we have a limit of characters, 200, but right now we are fine. So as we send a message, we should get a confirmation, and now all we have to do is wait for such a message to arrive in her email. So now you can see that there are two messages, one to confirm the account and one that shows a new message from GFCF14, which is the user that was signed on to send the message. Check here. GFCF14 has sent you a message. Are you a robot? Because of the simplicity of this project, I do not have a reply function, but as I could work more and more on this could become the cornerstone for a small social network of sorts. But that's pretty much what I wanted to show you. If you wish to stick around, I'm going to go over my code briefly. Now onto the code. I really like using Atom because it's very colorful and you can distinguish your code, what is a method, what is a variable, and so on. But you can use any text editor you like. First I'm going to go over the CSS, styles.css, which in here you'll notice that I have component classes, a component ID, tags, section for alignment, dimensions, and font color and background color. So this pop-up obeys to the pop-up that you see whenever you're trying to sign up. You notice that it pops up in a neat way, the rest becomes darker, and if we click on the X, or we click away from it, or we just press the X key, you see that it goes away. You have to take my word for it right now because you can see the keyboard, but you can test this out with the code from the GitHub later. So we just make it fixed, we give it a top and left to put it at the center, but we also make a transform and translate to put the center of the pop-up into the center of the screen. A minimum height and width, which was useful when I was coding this, but as it has grown, it probably doesn't need it anymore. A border padding so that it's not too compressed. Background color, border radius so that it has that rounded border. The display block so that we can actually see the color from the background. The opacity is 0 right now, but as it gets enabled, it becomes a 1. And a transition opacity of half a second, which is why you see that when it gets enabled, it fades in neatly. Then there is the close button, the little X that you see. It flows to the right. It gives a color. It has a width and height and a border radius of 25 so that we can make it a circle. There is no border so it doesn't look too artificial. A background or gradient and a cursor pointer so that it kind of prompts the user to click it. There is also the hover section, the background and active and disabled. So when you click on it, you see that if I put my mouse on it, it hovers. If I click on it, it changes a little bit more. The disable would never be used for this, but it could be implemented later. I just put it here so that I wouldn't lose these hash values as they look kinda nice. And there's the pop button, which basically refers to any of these buttons and also the buttons here. That also have similar properties: background, border, padding, the width, the color, and cursor pointer, the hover, active, and disable, which have similar values to the ones on the close button. The pop table, which refers to the table that contains this form, for which we are making a margin 0 pixels auto to try to center in the width. Border class separate so that it's not too close together, and border spacing also a little bit more. The bar element, which refers to the elements in this login bar, which are basically dips, which is why we need a display of inline block and a vertical line of top so that they're all kind of aligned together. The bar button, which are these buttons, and we're giving a little bit more padding so that they're more visible. Component IDs for the stats bar. So whenever we want to, let's say, sign in, you see this bar that comes from the left, and right now it doesn't fade. It's basically giving a position absolute, a bottom of 50 pixels and a height of 50 pixels, so that we put it at the bottom. A width of 0 and a positive 1 right now, so it's there, but it's not just not displaying. We display a block. Give a background color, the font size, text align, vertical line, simple stuff. Align height 50, and a transition that the width 1 second and the opacity 2 seconds. That's why you see that every time it comes rushing from the left to the right, it takes about a second, and then it fades away in about 2 seconds. So it's not too quick, but it's also kind of nice to see. Tags for the table, the table layout fix, table data for any cell, word wrap, break words so that the words are not wrapped together, and you can see that whenever we have our information, it's all on a single place instead of just wrapping over a next line. Margin and padding so that they're not too far away from each other. Alignment, which I tend to use, is probably not as useful because it's only a single line of CSS, but it's probably easier to say form text here, form text, instead of putting text line right, or table center instead of putting all of these. And there's dimensions for specifically these columns right here. It's taken. This column right here has a specific dimension so that we try to keep it as small as possible. The color, white and green, these are just names that I given these hex values. They don't really mean anything. And the background color, which obeys the same principle. Now, our scripts, which is the JavaScript file, we have all of the options that we need for variables to check if the form submission takes place, and we can either add or edit a user. Image ready, valid username, the password length has been exceeded, password is too low and password don't match, the email is invalid, if we cannot recover, cannot change password in case we're trying to recover a password if we forgot our username or password, and a maximum value for message. Now I'm going to explain this as I go with each of the other files. The beginning is rather simple. We have a header which basically shows the head where we're exporting the icon from my site, the jQuery that I'm using, the scripts file, the styles file, and basically just the cover, which is the darkening that you see whenever you have a form, the background where the logo is, which is right here, and the little green bar that divides this little green bar that divides the background from the rest of the content. There is also the stats bar, which basically appears everywhere, and that's why it is in the header. About this index site, as you notice, we have first setting the title, as the header requires a title from PHP. That way we can use it everywhere. We include the header. We include if we have a session going on. We include the logged in file. If not, the not logged in. That pertains to this login bar right here. And the content, and at the end the footer. A little bit about the footer is just housekeeping to try to not let the browser fill out these values and trying to be a little more responsible about it. Let's go over login and not logged in. Login and not logged in are pretty much the same thing. Logged in is going to show the elements. It's going to show the user if there is a session. It's going to show a sign up button, and it's going to show the date, and current time. These values are just arbitrary, as I wanted to try out what was the biggest possible date, the biggest possible time. Non-logged-in shows pretty much the same thing at the beginning, but also is trying to include a pop form, which is the sign up. These values are necessary: pop title, pop info, pop button name, pop button title, because this form is reused as we try to edit, and these values, these strings, are changed when we edit. There is also mention of the sign-in form, which is only used whenever we're not logged in. That's why it's needed. Now the index here has some content as inside of this tip. The welcome, the sample text, and an image from my site. So this is pretty much nameless because it could be anything. In order to be able to create sites like this, I have a template which basically shows all of the information needed. This will be changed, of course, depending on the site, and the content for that page to be placed here. So now let's go over the pop form that we were looking at. Pop form is basically the main form, which is the form to sign up or to edit the values of the user that is signed in, which is why you say name, email, I am, male or female, then the prompt for an image or use a default image, username, password, repeat the password about, and submit. As you see, we also, because in the sign up is to submit, and in the editing is to save changes. So now you see that pretty much every input here belongs to a class called signup input. You'll notice that the signup input, whenever they change, so there's a key we check for completion under signup. This also would happen, let's go into not logged in. This also would happen under the username and password of the sign-in form sign-in input, but in this case it does it on key up. Also, when we try to do a message form, we have check for completion for a message so that we are sure that we are sending information. And you notice that I've been interchangeably, whenever I sign in, I've been either clicking on the button or pressing enter. That's because the JavaScript right here allows me to do an on key up, so that whenever we press the enter key, 13, for the sign up, for the sign in, or for the message, we hide and click each of these. The hide and click function takes care of blurring the elements so that on a mobile device we hide the keyboard and see the actual bar and click on the element in question. As soon as we have these values filled out, on the sign up, right here, form button, we prevent a default so that we do not refresh the page upon submission, and stop immediate propagation to try to do the same. And we're trying to get an image extension based on the image provided, but if the image default, which is the checkbox, has been checked, we just give it a no value. We create form data to send everything including the image. We make a PHP file variable which checks for the name of the form. If it's edit, it will be update. If it's sign up, it will be sign up. So we call each of these values, and if it passes, you will notice that we just reset the form to do it again if we need to, and we show a success. In case there is any malicious input or lack thereof, we do an error. So in the case of sign up, we have sign up PHP, which basically starts a session just in case it's needed. Then we do the connect file, which basically takes care of connecting the client to the database. This is rather sensitive information that I won't display, but you will see it on the GitHub again. The values will be excess so that you do not get my information. Anyways, you get variables for what we have tried to output, and you notice here the password is being hashed using password bcrypt. We add slashes to the about so that we can write quotation marks. We have a value for hack, and this means we can do a hack check. You'll notice that when we try to sign up, the sign up button is disabled, but any sneaky user should be able to refer to it and prop it enabled so they can sign up. Despite of all the efforts of the JavaScript to try to error check, the malicious user could sign up. But as they try to do this, we get an error because the values are checked internally. which is why the sign up refers to a hack check. Hack check, which does all of those little checkings for if the name contains any HTML to prevent cross-site scripting, if the email is blank, is valid, if there is an email already used, if the image is the right extension, if the image is the right dimensions, if the username has not been taken, if the password is not blank or it hasn't contained scripts, and the about and so on. Once this all passes, we create a key based on a given number of values. We make a loop to get randomized values 60 times just to try to accommodate consistent use, as password bakery provides a hash of 60 characters. Then we create a prepared statement. Why is this important? Because we do not want to fall victims of SQL injection. Because these values are constant, I had to create variables for it, as bind parameters does not take anything else. But we can specify our parameters since most is a string except for the 0 at the bottom, which is an integer. We execute it, and if it's correct, we're just going to prepare the email. We need subject, two headers, and a message. We create the whole thing of the message, referring to the username, the file to refer to, which is the code that we have created right here, and we mail it. Then we upload the image. So to upload image, we're going to select back the users. This time we already know that the input is safe, and that's why we do not need to do a prepare statement, just a query, and fetch the associated values, get the ID, and that's why we save it into a folder called users, user, the ID name, dot the image extension, and that's why we get the values that look like this, user 1, user 4. And then we just move the uploader file to finish the process, and in the end we just output a pass. Since we outputted a pass, if the response is equal to pass, we just reset the form and continue on. So the signing would do pretty much the same thing, only that this time we know that the user ID is valid. We query it, get the information, and populate the session superglobal with it, so that we can show the site that we are logged in until we choose to sign out, which we just refer back. And there is the forgot password, which is the site when we try to recover our username or password. As we try to recover, we simply do, it's always good to, whenever there is queries to be executed based on user input, that we do prepare statements. And depending on the user input, if it was a username or a password, you do different information. We just get the user ID and send them the information right here. In the password case, we have to create a hash for the key. We have to get the date limit, idate u, which is basically the number of seconds since January 1st of 1970. And we just send that information. As we try to change the password, we're going to check that information based on the token. And here the token, we're going to get the date limit and the date from the moment the user is trying to change the password. If it's greater than 300, 300 being 300 seconds or 5 minutes, we just output that it has expired and that they need to do the process again. If not, we output the whole form again, and as they click change password message, change password button actually, you see that for every of these little forms I have made linked a change function. So change password button should be able to call password change. Password change will get the token and get the ID and then update the users with the password, which is being encrypted. Now let's take a look at the profile that I had mentioned before. It is going to output the profile using the header, and that's why we set the title. If we check that there is a session ID include logged in, not logged in, then the PHP of the content that we need for this site. If there was a user provided, when we look at our profile, or rather, PHP and user is equal to gfcf14. You see the profile. If the user, if the value is not provided, this is something else. Probably what I should get rid of is saying that it doesn't exist. But anyways, if we have a user, we're going to get that information. If we're logged on and the user ID is the same as the user, we just populate it with what we have. If not, we're going to have to create a prepare statement to get that user and get their information based on the associated values. Notice that at the end we're going to include the user info file, which basically it outputs this table that you see right here with the image, with the bar, with information, and the buttons should they need to exist. How is the image outputted? You'll see that it comes from our users. It gets the sex of the user, which is why it was important, and default in case the user did not select an image when the image extension is equal to no. But if there is an extension, we're going to get the user, the ID, and the image extension, which is why when we inspect this image, since it was user number 1, you notice that users slash user1.png. Then edit info is going to change the values on the pop form, say changes for the button, edit for the name, disable, rewrite what you want to change. You do not need to submit a new image if you don't have it, and edit your info. That's why if we sign in, this form looks exactly the same as the sign up form, but it has the title and the stuff changed. Let's go a little bit on the show all page, which is basically just getting everything from the users and getting an array out of each of the users that we obtain from the table users. And here I'm just using how many I can display in the row and how many can be there, so that if we have none, we are going to start a new row. If we have the maximum, we finish with that row and would start a new one as the counter set to 0. So we just get the information, their sex to default, their ID and image to display that image, and we get the username and the source that we have developed based on the for an image, and links to the user ID. And that's why in the show all it ends up looking like this. Last but not least, when we mentioned try to send a message, the message form with the characters remaining, and send a message, we're just going to check if the message is not greater than 200, or if it's set. Then because we have already done this checking, we can just use a simple query, send a message to the user, to the email provided of the user that is going to receive the message, and we're going to output the message of the user that's being the ID of the user that is being sending the message, the user ID, the username. And that's how it works. Now for the small little trinkets, we have the home button. That's just a link. These do not work by themselves because you do not need to link to a calendar site or a clock site, but the date has to be in accordance to the date of your computer, and that is done on the first function. To display time, we get a new date. Notice that we have days and months in arrays. We get a day suffix, which for first, second, third, fourth, so on, that we prepare here. We get the date, and here we get the days in the array, months, the current date, and the suffix. That's what you see, May 24, 2017. We get the hours and the meridian being ante-meridian, post-meridian, which is AM, PM. If it's greater than 12, we just subtract 12 and make it PM. If it's 12, we're going to make it PM. If it's 0, we're going to make it 12, but the meridian comes to AM. then the minutes and seconds. If there are less than 10, we have to append a 0 to them so that it looks in the format that you see 1 5. If it's 11:29 with 5 seconds, you want to see 05 instead of just a 5. And then we just affect the values of it. And then as the document gets created, notice that we call in this function, we set the interval to half a second, 500 milliseconds. Normally the clocks just go over 1 second, update every second, but in case I ever need to add any functions inside of this so that it goes a little more smoothly, I prefer to use the half a second thing. Now, all of this has taken me under a 2 to 3 hour basis on Monday through Friday, meaning not counting not weekends. About a month of coding, but if you are to do this on an intensive 8 hour day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it should take you about a week, maybe a week and a half or two, depending on how familiar you are with this. Maybe you are more familiar with this than I am and you are able to do this. So it's not something too hard to do, but it's something very useful that you might want if you have your site, if you want to test out bigger projects, if you want to test out playing with the database and such. So thank you for watching my video. I hope you have liked it. If you wish to see more programs and games and tutorials that I'm going to put up and modify, you can see my site right here or at the description of the video. Or if you have questions on this, feel free to message me at any time. Thank you very much.